Okay, so what are my personal thoughts on ethics of care and how it works? Well, first of all, I think it's really interesting to talk about what we mean by um, masculine and feminine. Um, this does not mean male and female. Male and female are biological or inherited traits based on chromosomes, secondary sexual characteristics, whereas masculine and feminine, this is learned behaviors on how, generally speaking in our society, the norm would be males are taught how to be masculine, females are taught how to be feminine. Although there's certainly effeminate males and masculine females in our culture and society, which when we get into other topics like gender issues, homosexuality, same-sex unions, it will be interesting. We'll kind of refer back to this discussion. But I made a quick list of the distinction between masculine and feminine traits, and I'll try to post this up there if I can later. And if you can come up with, and once again, Carol made it clear that these were not, it wasn't supposed to be a mirror. Ethics of care was not supposed to be a mirror or an antithesis to justice-based ethics, but I don't know, I think there is some antinomy there, but I don't think they have to be hostile. I think they can be complementary, like she was saying. It's just two different ways of looking at the same thing. How you doing, sweetie? Okay, I'm almost done. Hang in there. Do you want to see if you can stick some flowers in behind my ears? Maybe a little flowers action like that?
Do you know what I want to do?
What?
Use these flowers for mine.
Oh yeah, come here and I'll put some flowers in your hair while I'm finishing up. That'd be fun. I don't know if I can get them to stick, but come back down here. Okay, so when we talk about masculine and feminine traits or virtues, and we're going to talk about virtues, not the vices or the negative aspects about male and female. For masculine, we could start right off the get-go with this idea or concept of justice. Men tend to be very good at focusing on justice, very black and white. You know, what's right is right, what's wrong is wrong, a lot of gray area. The feminine counterpart to this would be mercy. And at least from a Christian perspective, it seems to me that mercy triumphs over justice. It's something we should seek. So this idea of mercy being more of the feminine value, whereas justice is the masculine value. Do you have one of your headbands? If you have one, I could put the flowers in that. It might be easier. Men tend, or males, masculine perspective tends to be more individualistic. Okay? They tend to do things on their own, where females seem to be more collective. I mean, they're better at networking, socializing, working in groups. Men often show their care or provision through protection. Women show it through nurture or care. My folks were a classic example of masculine and feminine traits. My dad was very masculine, my mother was very feminine. Oh, that's beautiful. I love it. And if you would have asked me growing up who loved me more, I would have just naturally said my mother, because she was very open and affectionate. She would give us hugs and kisses. She would be there to comfort us. She would always intercede for us if she thought the discipline was too rough from my father, or the penalty was too rough for the crime. And so I always loved my mother for that, because she seemed to be my advocate and someone to care for me. It wasn't until I was much older, in fact, providing for little ones like my father had done before me, that I began to realize how much my dad loved me and how much he showed that love. But he didn't do it by hugs and kisses, and we weren't that affectionate. I mean, I think it was a generational thing, and people were taught to be that way, especially men. It seems like we have a lot more freedom showing affection as males today than maybe males have had in the past. But he constantly protected us. I never went to bed afraid. I always had a roof over my head. I always had shoes on my feet. I never worried about where our next meal was coming from. And that was a great way of my dad showing love to us as a family. He was always there for us. He was faithful to my mother, his wife, and those are great things that as a child you may not respond to that as well as someone kissing your boo-boo knee, or giving you hugs, or crying with you, or laughing with you, or maybe playing games with you. But he was faithful day in, day out, his whole life, even to this day, taking care of his family, and that shows a great deal of love. But it was shown in a different way. Men tend to be more single-minded. Women seem to be better at multitasking. I don't know about you personally, but like I'm having a really hard time doing this video, doing some nurturing and talking about nurturing at the same time, where I have women friends who can be cooking dinner, helping the kids with the homework, talking on the phone, and maybe working on some project or organizing some event all at the same time. I mean, it just stresses me out thinking about it, where I'm really good at doing one thing at a time. Okay. Men tend to think in terms of hierarchies. In fact, men often try to evaluate where they stand in social relationships. This is often based on their job or their amount of power or influence. Women tend to be better at networking, or working as a in like a web or a net. They see the interconnection of people, and not so much looking for this hierarchy of roles. Men are taught to be individuals, separate. Women are often thrown into very interconnected relationships. Masculine traits are often more analytical, where feminine are more intuitive. Men look at equality, where women look more at relationships. Years ago, I read a really fascinating article in Reader's Digest, of all places, and it talked about the importance of fathers in child rearing. And it was nice, because you hear a lot about how important a mother is and her role, and it's certainly true. But this article really surprised me at some of the observations. And what it said was, women teach children how to be good winners, and fathers help teach children how to be good losers. And at first I thought, what are you talking about? But then I understood. It's this idea of good sportsmanship, on shaking the other person's hand even if they just beat the tar out of you in a boxing or wrestling match. Realizing that there are rules. And mothers tend to be better at helping you not be prideful, to be humble. I mean, if you win, not to rub it in, not to talk a lot of smack or trash talk, but to be gracious in those sorts of ways. When the distinction, like if my father would play Monopoly with us, or if it was my mother was there for the relationship. She just wanted to be with her family, with her children. She was there to have a good time. She wasn't worried about winning or losing. I mean, if you landed on one of her properties and you couldn't pay, she'd say, just consider it a visit. But my dad, he would be like going, oh no, well, thanks for there was none of that. It was like, this is how much you have to pay, this is what the rules say, and he was always pulling out the rule book to consult. And I think it's things we need to learn both. We need to learn to be gracious, but we also need to learn that there's rules we have to live by. Can I have a little kiss?
Give me a kiss of bye goodbye.
Okay, what about you? Okay. Thanks, sweetie. Thanks for your help.